Why, hello, welcome. Hey, we got the Christmas week here at Lang's Legal. Hanukkah as well. Doing a little cleanup here before we take some time off and spend it with our families and make new memories and relive the old ones as well. But since you're here, grab a broom, grab a mop, give me a hand. No, not really. I find it quite relaxing actually to spend some time and take care of the office. And take care of veterans especially. I'll tell you what, let's do this. Let's talk VA disability. Let's see what we can learn today. Follow me. We'll come down here to the conference room and Why, thank you for joining me here at the table. Yeah, you caught me cleaning up there a little bit, dressed down for the holidays. We're getting relaxed around here, but not too relaxed because we've got plenty of veterans to help. But we're definitely going to spend some time with some family for a week during Christmas holidays here, Hanukkah holidays, and just make new memories and relive some really good old ones. So for those who don't know, I'm attorney Matthew Lang, VA accredited attorney. I worked years within the VA. I've worked now a few years outside the VA working on disability claims. Got my coffee, I'm ready to go. I hope you too have your coffee or tea or water or drink of choice to sit back and relax for the holidays and make those memories. And as we do so, let's talk VA disability. So I'll be honest, ladies and gentlemen, as I walk down the hallway here, I sat down here in front of the camera. I really wasn't quite sure what topic to talk about today, as we go through a series of topics for VA disability. We've got so many more to cover and so much more detail I want to give you, but I did come across one that came to my mind as I grabbed my coffee there and walked through the door. I want to talk about hearings a little bit more. So let's talk about those hearings. Again, not a huge detailed section of the law and all the weeds and getting lost in them all. I'm going to save that for another time because I know I've mentioned a couple times my belief and my interpretations of how a hearing could likely be, and the law does allow for a hearing at any time in the claim. I think it's something that we need to focus in on more in detail and actually look at those rules and laws that we won't do today, as I, again, walked down with no real idea of what I was going to do until I got in the room, and I don't have any notes for that. So what you're going to get today for me is all off the top of my head and very raw information from my experiences. But I want to save that other video for another time, so we won't get in those weeds there, because I think that's crucial to help both veterans and VA understand those rules a lot better and why I think that way when it comes to the hearings. But let's talk about three different types. I want to talk about the proposed reductions, hearings, option that you have there, veterans. I want to talk about those informal conferences with the higher level reviews, and I want to get into some of the Board of Veterans Appeals, Board, BVA, you might hear me call it as well, appeals and the hearings that are there and how those work. Now, one note I want to make for everybody is that when we call these hearings or conferences, informal conferences, these are not like going to court. I've experienced in my time of conducting these inside the VA as a VSR, RVSR, as a supervisor, working to test putting together teams that were trained specifically for hearings. That's one thing I came across in all that time and experience, was I feel a lot of veterans came in all nervous and ready to face a judge and a jury and trial and everything. That's not what it is. VA is the purpose of the VA is to be non-adversarial, even though it feels like sometimes they are adversarial. They're supposed to be non-adversarial. So you're not walking in, veterans, into like a courtroom. You're not walking in with the judge in a robe. Okay, man, until you get to the Board of Veterans Appeals, you have a judge, but it's still very non-adversarial. The idea is you're not going through that adversarial formality. You're not there to be on trial and so forth. You're there really to have a conversation. That's what these hearings are, and these informal conferences is a conversation. It's a conversation with the VA. In many cases, it's a moment to give additional testimony, to answer some questions, and to clear up the rules, the laws, and the evidence in the file. And that'll all apply to the file. So let's look at these three here. I think I'm going to start with the Board of Veterans Appeals first, because it's our more formal, informal one here. When I say formal, it's because it's recorded, and there's a transcript to it. And you do sit in front of a judge wearing a robe. Or sometimes there's a shirt and tie, I suppose. But that's a little bit more formal. But it's informal in the sense that veterans are usually there with your representative at this point. If you don't have one for a board appeal, a BVA appeal, I would highly recommend one, because you really want to have somebody who understands the rules and regulations in great detail and can speak some of that legalese with that judge, because they're definitely going to know those rules. They're going to know those regulations. They're going to understand a lot more of that there. They've got a lot of hearings to go through, and the last thing you really want to do is mess up a hearing by giving them a bunch of information they already have or things that aren't relevant to your case. So I really highly recommend a representative there. If you want, my self-plug here again, veteranling.com, get a free case evaluation. If that's where we got to take your case, we'll do it. And if we need to schedule that hearing strategically, we'll do that too. And we'll sit in there and together, and we'll talk to that judge. So that's what it looks like. Here's what you go in. You're in front of a judge. You're either in a room if you're out in Washington, D.C. Sometimes you're in a room if you're at your local VA office and they still do the video conferencing on the wall. I don't know if they really do a lot of travel board hearings anymore, because typically what I do is ask for a virtual hearing because I think it's easier for everybody. So I can be here in my office. The judge can be out in Washington, D.C. Veteran, you can be sitting at home. Maybe even in Montana or something. The point is we can be all spread out across the nation and hold this hearing. So we'll all log in. We'll get login information. We'll all log in. The judge is going to go through a swearing in, double checking, making sure we're on the same page with the topics and the disabilities that are being discussed with the hearing, and any other procedural questions or concerns that, say, myself would have if I'm the representative in there. Things I might want to point out. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I try to clarify certain things, or I try to see if we can't get maybe a second appeal that might have a hearing on it that's at the board pulled in if they're willing to do it, and they don't have to in that case. But it's the idea of we talk some procedural stuff really quick and see where we are, make sure we're on the same page. So veterans, you'll hear all that. Now, once we get ready to go, judge is going to turn to you. Veterans are going to do the oath and everything and double check a couple things with you and get your name and everything on record. Then we're going to start. And here's how we're going to start. I may or may not give some sort of opening statement if I'm the representative. Depends on what I'm looking at in your file and depending if I think that's necessary or not. Because I know the judge has already been through the file. I know the judge is very familiar with what's going on in your file. I'm not there to waste their time. So it's a strategic move, but just know it could happen. The main part for you veterans is that if you have a representative at this time, your representative is going to ask you a series of questions. Now, one thing I always tell veterans when we get into these board hearings is that if I ask you a question, please understand it's not because I don't know the information. It's because I'm presenting to the judge who I want to make sure has the information. Even though the judge has been through the file, I want to make sure that they haven't missed this information. Maybe what I'm trying to do is get you to give certain testimony to fill in some holes and some gaps in your evidence as well. So understand that typically, as I tell veterans I've represented, is I am asking questions I already know the answer to. But that's part of the presentation. So you'll answer those questions, you'll give that testimony. Sometimes the judge will pipe in and go, hey, here's a question. And they'll ask their questions too. But it's all informal. See, we're just having a conversation at this point between the three of us. And you answer the questions. When we're all said and done, I'll usually give a nice little closing statement to summarize everything that was in there and highlight the points I was trying to get at. And many times we'll even turn to you, veteran, and make sure that there's nothing else that you want to add to the whole process and allow you, in a sense, a closing statement for yourself as well. And then we go on our merry little way, and we wait for the 90-day period, if we haven't waived it, of the evidence submission period there, for the claim to come back around to the judge's desk. And with any additional evidence, if we feel we need some, that's provided, and allow them to make the decision. Now, this could take months still in the process because of just the way the rules work and the way the workload comes in and so forth. So you have to be patient, veterans, still, even though by this time we've already probably been 3 years of patience, but there'll still be a little bit more. But in general, that's a board, that's a BVA, that's a Board of Veterans Appeals hearing right there for you. It's very informal. It's recorded. It's probably the only formal piece of it with a transcript, and swearing in. But it's just the three of us there having a conversation. If you have some witnesses that I feel would be good, if I'm the one representing you, if your representative feels you have witnesses, that would be good for their testimony as well. You'll have them in the room as well. We'll do a swearing with them. We'll turn from each one asking the questions in order, and we'll get the information that we need and the testimony we need. But it's just a conversation, in short. So remember, you're just going in and having a conversation. Be polite, be courteous, and just have a conversation. So when we're on the video there, if I forgot to mention it, we're all on video. We're all turned in. Our cameras are all on. And I'm going to point this out because this is one big difference I see with the VA. Cameras, at least from my experience, don't get turned on. It's kind of odd for me, but it's what it is, and I don't think it causes any real issues in the hearing or the informal conference anyways. But do know, veterans, it's a huge difference depending on where you are. Sometimes there's those cameras and sometimes there's not turned on. So let's jump down. We'll just go backwards. Let's jump into a higher level review, the informal conference. So before the Appeals Modernization Act, there were options for hearings that were formal or informal with the DROs, with the decision review officers. And again, it was whether it was recorded or not recorded, and whether that script, what the script was that was used to do the swearing and so forth. Nowadays, being an informal conference only, veterans, what you get is not usually a moment to give testimony. What you usually have is, if you have a representative, is that representative and the VA will have essentially a phone call with each other. And they'll talk about your case. They'll talk about the legalities of things. They'll talk about the evidence. Talk about things that typically I feel the VA misses, what the VA did miss, the rules that they failed to apply, and so forth. Now, the issues I will take with this kind of conference is the idea that sometimes it's good to not have things recorded, because I think you get a little bit more leeway in that discussion. You don't have to be so formal, and maybe it takes some of the tension away. But not being recorded leaves us with no transcript for the file. And I find sometimes that's a problem. And in many cases, it is a problem. Because now we're relying on the decision review officer, the DRO, to take good notes and actually put those notes in the VA claim. And I can't say I've actually seen that happen from my side yet. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. No, it still could. It's just from the ones I've handled so far, I have not seen that. I've seen 1 or 2 sentences in a half an hour to an hour phone call. That's not a very good note, VA, just saying. One thing I would recommend is maybe a few more notes to remind yourself of what occurred during that informal conference. Things that you can go back to and look at. Now, these informal conferences, again, veterans don't typically have you in them unless you don't have a representative and you are talking to the VA yourself. But again, know the rules and regulations, understand the laws that you're about to talk about. I highly recommend getting a representative at this point for somebody who can go through and do all that legalese with you. But I have had in practice where I represent a veteran. We choose to do the informal conference because we feel it's a good strategy in the case. And I've had veterans who want to sit in on those calls. I haven't had anybody from the VA say no to that. I don't know if they can say no to it. So I have definitely had veterans sit in on the calls with me to hear what's going on. VA, do know that this is a great time for you to be prepared. The veteran's there to be part of their claim and to help the process. But what I find typically happens is the veteran gets to witness the lack of preparedness and the lack of understanding of the rules, the regulations, and how to, well, just be unprepared. It's not my intent to show the veteran that by any means, but VA, unfortunately, from what I've experienced, you're very good at doing that. I'll give you an idea here. I don't know your level of experience, VA, when I get in on a hearing with you or an informal conference. You could be brand new. You could be a year in. You could be 20 years in. I don't know. But I'm going to try to fill you out so I know how to handle that without typically divulging that to the veteran. Because I don't want I don't want you to feel more uncomfortable. So just do know, I'm usually not asking that question. I'm just going to assume that they know what they're doing. But the problem that we have is sometimes I'll ask a question and it'll be very obvious that the VA employee doesn't understand the rule at all. And it ends up getting highlighted. And veterans, you'll see that. And so VA, I want you to understand that when they see that, for my discussion with veterans I've represented, it doesn't raise the level of confidence in VA that you're capable of doing this correctly. And I believe you can, but just understand what that looks like from the other point of view. I also find that many times the DRO in the informal conferences have not reviewed the file in detail. The one thing I like about the ward, as I may or may not have mentioned, is that judge knows what's in that file. And I know they know what's in that file because I'm also asking questions to figure out what they know in that file, because I need to know what direction to go. I need to know how to present everything. And while that judge at the board level is going to be pretty well spot on with everything and understand everything I'm saying, and I'm going to be able to gauge that we're all on the same page, I find many times in these informal conferences and in these formal hearings that we'll talk about too, that VA, you have not been through that file. I've had plenty of people say, no, I haven't looked at it yet. I don't know how we can have a conference or even a hearing if you don't know what's in that file. And so that's just something I come across, veterans, just know that. So if you do hear that, that's not necessarily the end of the world in your claim. We just have to shift our strategy a little bit more. But VA, be prepared, please. That's I think the practice tip I'm going to give you on this one. Be prepared. Know what's in that file. Review it in detail. I've even had ones where hearings where I've asked the question if the file's been reviewed, and I've been told yes. So I'm like, great, awesome. Let's go ahead and hash out some of these errors, and we start talking about the evidence. And I learned quickly that VA employee had lied to me and has no clue what's in that file. So VA, just be prepared. Be prepared. I think it's a huge practice tip for you. Know what's in the file, understand the rules, regulations. I think can definitely help all of us out quite a bit. So veterans, just know sometimes there's challenges in these and we have to get through them. But that's why you have a representative to help you do so. So anyhow, let's get off that soapbox really quick. I just want to make sure that was put out there so we all understood some of the challenges that go on out there. And if there's any other challenges that people want to share, again, feel free to comment. I think it's a great platform to kind of point out where we can better ourselves. Maybe there's things that I can do differently as a representative. As an attorney back here, there's things that the VA can do differently. And veterans, there's maybe things that you can do differently as well, like how you're prepared and what testimony you provide and understanding when to provide certain things and when not to provide certain things because they may not be relevant to the claim. And we don't want to take up a whole bunch of extra time on stuff that's not relevant. So again, let's all work together. So, Board of Veterans Appeals, it's an informal conversation that's got a little bit of formality to it in front of the judge, and we have our conversation. Informal hearing or informal conference with in the HLR, we usually sit with the DRO if I'm as a representative, and we just have a conversation about the file and we compare notes between the laws and the evidence that's in there to get it all on the same page, typically. Now let's talk about the proposed reduction piece. The proposed reduction veterans you may get if the VA finds sustained improvement, a CUE or something else that fits in the law, and honestly, it could be just the VA has made an error in understanding interpretation of rules or laws, especially the CUE portion where I know there's a lot of struggle with that one from years of experience. So it just may be an error that this is coming down to you and it'll be fixed later on. But you're going to receive a letter, veterans, and that letter is going to give you 60 days to provide additional evidence and argument to change the VA's mind. Within that 60 days, you're entitled to a formal hearing to provide testimony as well as part of that evidence period, as part of that evidence. What's fascinating to me is for due process, which is really granted to us underneath the Fifth Amendment, and it's underneath the Constitution here, that we typically have a 60-day window to exercise our due process rights. Well, we do still, but the lawmakers, interesting enough, have kind of tried to cut it in half, I feel like. So veterans, read that letter in detail, because you got 60 days, you can still request a hearing. But if you don't request the hearing in the first 30 days, and it's in the second set of 30 days, so it's in the after 31 days, between 31 and 60 days, the VA can still make a final decision and then later come back and hold your hearing after the decision is made. To me, that feels very awkward and doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because it's like me holding it's like, say we go to a trial and the trial was held before all the evidence is presented, knowing that there's a request to submit more evidence. So I'm not sure what the lawmakers were thinking on that one. But if you do get the hearing request in the first 30 days, VA is not allowed to make that decision until the hearing has been held. Now, that could be months down the road before the hearing is held again, depending on workload, and that's fine. Just know that that's kind of how that rule works there. So at this point, veterans typically, again, here we are, we're in a conferencing setting of maybe Microsoft Teams or something. Cameras typically, from my experience, don't get turned on again like they do in the setting with the Board of Appeals, Veterans Appeals there. You're not in front of a judge, you're in front of an RVSR typically, a rating veterans service specialist, who may, unfortunately, in my experience, never done a hearing before in their life. Probably got some quick training, you got a transcript thrown in front of them, and here we are. But you could be in front of somebody who's got plenty of experience in doing these hearings as well. So we're going to work with a different level of education, again, different knowledge base as well, but they're going to do their job. There's going to be the recording, there's going to be a swearing in piece as well. And what you're going to really see between the similarities of the board and the VA hearing, formal hearing, is that it's still kind of informal. We're still there to have a conversation. We're still there to do the same thing. If you got a representative like myself, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Again, questions I already know the answer to, in order to get it on record, in order to get things straightened out, and get the evidence in there to fill the gaps in, and that your testimony in there to fill in gaps. Again, you can bring witnesses. We can swear them in, and we can do that portion as well, and we get their testimony in there as well. It's just a conversation between us. The VA employee is welcome to ask questions as well, and that RVSR is welcome to ask questions as well in the process. But again, VA, I do caution, please be prepared. Please understand the rules and regulations of the questions you're asking as well. And this is educational purposes, not to beat anybody up. I have been in some of these hearings where, interesting enough, for example, there's been some that are CUEs that were called. And I feel underneath the law the CUE was incorrect. It wasn't truly a CUE. So to help explain that, knowing that that is a problem that I've experienced in the VA from working inside the VA, the lack of understanding of what a true CUE is, and understanding that legalese and all those legal terms, they decided to hold a hearing. Now the veteran's there because of the veteran's claim. But if you know anything about a CUE is a decision about the evidence. It's a snapshot. It's about the evidence at the time when the decision was made and the rules that were in place at the time. There should not be any new evidence being submitted. We're not talking about today. We're talking about that moment in time. And maybe if I'm wrong here, or somebody has a different perspective of this, I definitely look forward to the comments. So again, that could help improve myself as well. But the idea there is I've had the RVSR swear in the veteran for testimony on a CUE. But I can't provide new evidence, and the testimony would be new evidence. So I found that very fascinating immediately, as it demonstrates to me that that employee didn't understand the rule that we were there to talk about. So VA, I think that's my caution again, is sometimes the veterans know these rules too. They've been in different forums. They're veterans that know you read stuff. You get help from other veterans as well. Your representatives may have already talked to you about the situation. And so I'm pretty sure when veterans see that VA, that it doesn't look good on you either. And again, it's still always that claim file review issue. Being told no, they didn't take the time to review the file, to actually know what was happening. No, they didn't actually review the file even though they say they did. I mean, I've seen it all in both the informal conferences and the formal hearings that I've held here. So do know, VA, that these are things that I think you can improve on, and I'm here to help you to do so. So please understand these are things that I run across that just doesn't look really good, especially with the veteran, and things that we can iron out and make look better and make the process better with if we gave the time and effort to actually know what we're there for and what we're talking about and what the evidence is of the case. Because I can't imagine anybody would be okay with walking into a courtroom on a charge and have the judge go, I don't have a clue what we're here for, I haven't read the file, but you're guilty. Have a nice day. So, okay, without getting on any more soapboxes, let's try to make this a relaxed topic for myself here and for everybody out there. As again, we're in the holidays week here with Christmas and Hanukkah. I do wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and just a fantastic week altogether, in all honesty. But those are hearings for you, everybody. Those are some of the error issues I've ran across, some of the strategy I've used. Those are some of the differences and similarities between those three different types of being a reduction hearing, being a formal conference, or being a hearing in the board. With a lot of technology, we're going to find a lot of it's virtual anymore. It's done through the computer system. Sometimes just a phone call, depending on how it's all set up. I know with the board, that is a much smoother transition and process. I feel that rules are definitely followed there very well. And unfortunately, VA, I think you still have a long way to go on your side in understanding how to do the hearings and so forth, because again, from my experience, it's been long-standing that it's just kind of thrown at somebody and you hopefully figure it out. So I hope one day we can get on the same page with that and we can make that whole process much smoother as well. So please feel free, comment, like, subscribe, share the video. Let's get the word out there. Let's have more videos where we can actually go through some of those laws and everything and talk about some of these in more detail in the future. So thank you again, everybody. Enjoy your holidays, enjoy your week, and enjoy the memories that you make this year as we walk into a new year where we can make plenty more as well. Thank you.